Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Legendary Upside channel. My name is Sam Sherman, a new contributor on this channel, and today we're going to be going over the Week 3 preview show. As always, joined by the man himself, Pat Crane. Pat, how we doing?
Doing good. Yeah, excited to talk through week 3.
Awesome. Also joined today by Sackreligious. Sack, how you doing?
Doing well. Excited for week 3 here.
Awesome. So, brief overview of what we're going to be doing today. We have a minor tweak to the show format. We're going to be covering 4 games on the main slate this week. And the goal of the show is to go over a lot of the awesome information that Pat has been researching in his walkthrough column. But obviously, we're not going to give away all of the fun details here. We'll cover 4 of the games, and then obviously the rest of the info can be found on legendaryupside.com if you want to get more notes. But without further ado, we'll start off here with the Eagles and the Saints. Starting here on the Eagles side of the ball. Curious, Pat, how you're approaching the pass catchers in this game. We know A.J. Brown is very likely to miss. I'm not sure if he's officially been ruled out, but very, very unlikely to play this week. How high up can we get Devonta Smith in the wide receiver rankings this week without A.J. Brown?
I mean, I think pretty high. He's run 100% of the routes so far this season. He's got a 32% target share. He's had a decent share of the first read targets, but I think that'll increase, with Brown out again, certainly from where he was week 1. And I think, the target competition outside of Brown is just really poor. Jahan Dotson yet to get a target. Yet to get a first read target. Excuse me. He's got a 4% targets per route run. Britton Covey kind of looks like maybe he can get some underneath stuff. But when I first saw him out there, I was like, "Oh, is Will Shipley getting run?" And then because he almost looks like a back. He almost looks like a running back. On this little kind of dump off stuff. So as far as like the downfield passing offense, I think Smith is really in position to kind of dominate that. Goddard, they tend to use on screens a little bit, and obviously a little bit more kind of in the middle of the field. But yeah, I mean, Smith, I think, can consolidate a lot here.
Yeah, I did think it was a little disappointing for Dallas Goedert in week 2. I did expect a little consolidation there. He only had a 14% target share in week 2 without A.J. Brown. That was certainly a little disappointing. Sack, anything else here on the Eagles pass catchers with Goddard, Smith, or maybe any of the deeper plays? Are they in play at all this week?
I mean, I'm willing to go back to the well on Goddard. I know his performance was a little underwhelming last week, but I just think given an additional week to game plan without A.J. Brown, I think the Eagles are going to try to figure out how can we be efficient if it's not going to be Devonta Smith. And so I'm willing to do Goddard specifically in the 12-man underdog battle royale drafts, like the dog bowl or the goal line stand. I like Goddard quite a bit there because you can get him pretty late, and he's a pretty easy stack partner for Jalen Hurts, who looks to be a pretty good play on the slate. But in the deeper options, like going down to Britton Covey or Jahan Dotson, those are not guys that I would play in any format. Outside of Showdown, Britton Covey did win some people some money in Showdown.
I think as far as that type of play, he's fun. But yeah, it's like how deep. It's really a Showdown type of thing.
Yeah. So just Goddard and Smith for me.
Yeah, I did want to know back to Devonta Smith. He saw again 1 game sample. Don't want to put too much weight into it, but it does make sense without A.J. Brown. He saw a 29% targets per route run and 34% target share last week without A.J. Brown. Those are big spikes over his career numbers when playing alongside A.J. Brown. I think A.J. Brown's actually been healthy in every single game he's played with the Eagles so far in his career, so we don't really have any sample besides this past week of what Smith looks like without him. So did think that was interesting that we saw such a big spike. I would be ranking Smith pretty confidently in the top 10, top 8 of wide receivers this week. I don't think it's a play that's going under the radar, however, against the Saints. So let's get back to the Saints side of things here. Again, we talked about them last week. I think they're kind of the storyline of the NFL so far and how good their offense has looked through 2 weeks. Curious, starting with you, Pat, is Rashid Shaheed. Let's start with the Rashid Shaheed side of things. Is he like a locked in every week wide receiver 2? Because you can certainly make a case for it just looking at the numbers. Are you ready to go that far with Rashid Shaheed after 2 weeks?
I don't know that I would say he's a locked in wide receiver 2, but I think he's like in the mix. He's probably more like a high end wide receiver 3 type. For me, we've got him right now at wide receiver 28 in the update that we're going to be posting later today. So yeah, I mean, I think Rashid Shaheed definitely is popping. Like he's got, the 50-yard touchdowns will do that, but 25% targets per route run. He's running 82% of the routes. He's drawing a lot of double coverage, so defenses are taking him seriously. He's got a 31% double coverage rate, which is actually higher than Olave, and makes sense. I mean, he's definitely like a threat in real life threat. But 14% first read target rate is not great, and I think ultimately Olave is still the top option in the offense. This has been a nice run here for Shaheed, but yeah, I'm still kind of zooming out. I'm still like zooming out a little bit, bringing in our preseason priors, bringing in what we know from previous seasons. And I think Shaheed has been very impressive. I was pretty intrigued by Shaheed in the offseason. I thought he was a very interesting best ball pick, but I would actually expect things to swing towards Olave a little bit here just because I think Olave is the better player. And they were making a big effort to get Olave the ball last week with the first read targets.
That makes sense. And yeah, what I'll add on Shaheed's profile, I guess first overall, how did this guy go undrafted again with the speed he has? Like it's insane watching him on the NFL field. You'd think his speed alone should have definitely made him worthy of a day 3 draft pick. So that's shocking to me. I don't know how that happened. Number 2, I do think the big difference between Shaheed last year and this year is he's always been able to do the deep stuff. He did that last year. He would show up in the box score occasionally with, a 60-yard touchdown, be kind of a better and best ball guy. I think the big difference this year from what I've seen on film is there's a much more concerted effort from Clint Kubiak to get Rashid Shaheed the ball in schemed touches situations. So I charted his first 2 weeks. He has a total of 6 schemed touches, which I define as screens, end arounds. He even has 1 carry lined up in the backfield. He has 6 of those through 2 weeks. That would be a 17-game pace of 50 design touches. Last year, he had a total of just 18 of those. So it's like a 3x increase on these scheme touches. And that's huge in my opinion for his like PPR 4. Yeah. If he's getting peppered with screens, getting some carries, 15 rushing yards a game, like that actually makes a pretty big difference, changing him from this volatile deep threat to a more consistent contributor. So yeah, did want to throw that in. I do agree with your point, Crane, that I think Olave is the better wide receiver here, but I think there's room for both of them to be good. I think Shaheed, I wouldn't have him quite there yet, but I think he could be, in the wide receiver 2 consideration by season's end. That would not shock me at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of like you got to know that the floor is still not super high, even with like a little bit more scheme touches and stuff. He's still going to be a guy who makes his day on a long touchdown, basically, and that's going to be volatile. But he can do it. I mean, I think one of my other big takeaways is that like I'm buying the Saints. They're doing all the stuff. They went from, we probably should have been on I was like tepidly in on I was quietly in on the Saints.
Yeah, me too. I was too cowardly.
I was cowardly. I didn't want to put my name out there saying, I don't know, the Saints seem a little underpriced, but like they were going from a baseline is like kind of like the Falcons, right? We were all excited about the Falcons because going from Arthur Smith to, a modern offense, and just like the jump that we're going to get in coaching is going to be great. And then we also had the quarterback upgrade and everything. But the Saints are actually the team where we saw the jump in modern offense. And for as slow and run heavy as Arthur Smith is, he actually at least does like play action and stuff, like, play action nonstop with Justin Fields now, right? So he was already doing some of the modern things. The Saints weren't. They had the lowest play action rate in the league last year. They're up to a 45% play action rate. In week 1, I was like, 36% play action. This is awesome. This is the highest in the league. This would have led the league last year. Like, let's go. They were at 59% in week 2 against the Cowboys. they're going nuts, and I said, like, last week, I was like, look, really exciting week 1 for the Saints, but Derek Carr has a pretty long time to throw. It's like 2.82 second time to throw. Like, they're going to have to speed that up. They're going to have to adjust the game plan against the Cowboys because of this pass rush. And they did not. They doubled down on the previous game plan, and Carr's time to throw did not come down. They're just able to get him moving. They're able to do like design rollouts, that type of stuff. And it's unlocking targets downfield. And they were beating the Cowboys pass rush and then lighting them up through the air and on the ground. So I'm expecting the Saints to put up points here. Like, I'm buying what the Saints are doing right now. Maybe 7-8 weeks from now, teams will have figured out how to slow it down considerably. But for this week, I'm betting on the Saints to keep it rolling here.
Yeah, I may or may not have gone, quote, all in on Derek Carr in a $2,000 buy-in league off the waiver wire. So, Drain, I hope your faith in the Saints comes to fruition.
70% play action. Who says that?
Derek Carr, I drafted Caleb as my only quarterback. Derek Carr, I need you more than ever right now. Zach, I'll let you chime in here. Anything else? Big picture on the Saints. We haven't talked about the Kamara side of the equation, so I'll let you weigh in on any of the Saints pass catchers, or if you have takes on Kamara going forward in this matchup versus the Eagles.
Yeah, I just want to echo what you had to say about Shaheed, Sam. I was just from watching the games, I was noticing he's not a one-trick pony anymore.
No.
Like you said, they're scheming him touches. He even had like some kind of like middle of the field, like, deep 15-yard out type stuff that they're doing for him. And so I definitely think we could see Shaheed take a step forward. The thing that is the most intriguing to me is that Shaheed has, by just a side effect, been a little hidden in the first 2 games, which is not what you would think. You'd be like, oh, the guy scored 2 deep touchdowns in the first 2 weeks. What do you mean he's hidden? Well, he's hidden in the fact that the Saints haven't had to throw after those deep touchdowns.
Yeah.
So all you're seeing is like, yep, he's doing the stuff that we're used to. But like you've noted, like, no, he's getting these scheme touches. And I think this could be a game that goes back and forth where both teams are having to, they're going to run a lot of plays. There could be a lot of scoring. I was telling Pat, I think this is a sneaky favorite to potentially be one of the highest scoring games of the season, because we just haven't seen the Saints be pushed yet. And we know that the Eagles can put up points when they're pushed too. So basically, we're just hoping what I want to see is the Eagles get down early and have to pass, so they're not just killing clock with Saquon Barkley, but keep it close enough that the Saints are not going to take their foot off the gas, because the Saints will still be willing to throw, provided the game's not out of hand, and I think the Eagles can do that. So I'm really interested in this game. I've been playing it extremely heavily in the underdog battle royale formats, just where you get like that artificial maximum ownership on a guy where he can only be drafted once in a draft. Like, I think the optimal rate for Jalen Hurts to be in the winning lineup is significantly higher, especially in the 12-man drafts where, okay, it's, Jalen Hurts in the field is going to be owned 8.33% of the time. I think he's optimal more than that. And so it just seems like a pretty easy spot to and you've got the consolidated passing game there with Smith and Goddard. It just feels like a really clean way to play it. If you can get the Olave bring back or the Shaheed bring back, it feels really good. And then not to leave Kamara out of it, because he's been, I don't think any of us were terribly interested in him in best ball, citing his efficiency metrics that have steadily declined over his career. But I mean, he's really making us eat crow to start the season, at least here. The Saints offense being efficient is just really, really beneficial for the guy who's going to get the vast majority of the work as the running back there, because there's lots of touchdowns to go around. And we really saw that come to fruition with a 4-touchdown game against the Cowboys. So Kamara is a clear play here. You're certainly starting him in your home league. And he feels like a fine DFS and battle royale play too.
He's also been good. I mean, he's averaging per NFL Next Gen's rush yards over expected. He's got a 49% success rate there, which is really good. That's running back 6. He's averaging 15 rush yards over expected per game through the first 2 games, which probably could understate things a little bit because they've been, blowing teams out. They saw Jamal Williams a little bit at the end of the first game. So, but that's good. That's RB10. And then he's also RB1 in yards per route run. So I was like, Kamara's looked pretty washed, as far as a runner. Like he kind of fell off and then held the baseline. It's sort of similar to Derrick Henry, where like he fell off. He never like got like terrible, but it was like not great. And then he's an older back. And the Saints offense isn't going to be very good. So like, what's the point? And now the Saints offense looks awesome. And he's the entire backfield. And if they throw more, I mean, he's got a 21% target share. If they throw more, like he could smash through the air. So, I mean, Kamara, he's a really strong play. Like for DFS and stuff, I'm kind of curious if maybe Kamara helps keep the passing game stuff like in check a little bit. I haven't really dug in there yet, but that would be one of my hopes. Just like as I break down the matchup, is like because I mean Kamara could be the key to the week for sure, but the passing game stuff is really exciting too.
Yeah, I do think the Eagles, you are able to run on people who've broken down the defensive film there are saying the Eagles are pretty weak rush defense so far, and that's it definitely has.
You can just check the numbers. They're 31st in EPA allowed per rush.
Yeah,
27th in rushing success rate allowed. Like, yeah, you can run on the Eagles.
They're a run funnel for sure so far, and that's what the Saints have wanted to do. It's certainly been influenced by game script, like to use maybe like a boxing analogy. It's been kind of knockout punches in the first round for the Saints the past couple of weeks. They basically haven't had to try after the first quarter. So I don't know how much to trust the pass rate over expected stuff, but they have been a team that so far looks like they are run first, even though the pass game has been wildly successful. So yeah, maybe this is the game where Kamara really gets to eat with their zone rushing scheme in New Orleans. It definitely will be interesting to watch. I have been completely kind of trying to rethink Kamara versus how I viewed him to open the season. I don't want to completely throw out the priors that he's washed, but yeah, this new system is clearly way better suited for him. And yeah, I don't know. I think he's in the conversation, top 10 running back rest of the season. He's definitely in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the shorter your time frame, the more willing you should be to throw out the priors on something like this, because he's in such a great spot. Now, am I like terrified of him when we get to December? I'm not. I'm definitely wishing I had a lot more Kamara and best ball and stuff, but that's a long way from now. He's an older running back. He's handling a ton of volume. But in week 3, like in a couple days, I think he's going to do really well. I think he's going to get a lot of work and be pretty efficient on it, because that's what he's been so far. And really, he's never really fallen off as a receiver. I mean, even last year, I think he had like 1.73 yards per route run, which is quite good. So at the very least, you would be excited about him in a back and forth type of game. And we're thinking that could be this is the first time the Saints really get pushed this year, maybe. So just no real reason to be doubtful of what Kamara can do here, I think. The biggest way for me to kind of fade it again would be to play it through the passing game. Let me get the Olave sell real quick, because we haven't seen Olave really hit yet. He almost had a touchdown. Sorry, Sack, I know you were hoping for that touchdown in Battle Royale, but the stats that we've gotten so far on Chris Olave, they've been solid. 2.36 yards per route run, pretty good, but he hasn't gotten the targets like we were hoping. 21% target share, has not been dominant. But I wrote in the walkthrough, I said, think about it this way. Olave was being drafted in round 2 when we thought he was part of a bad offense. The Saints now look shockingly good. Olave has delivered high-end per route efficiency with a 2.36 yards per route run, and the Saints get a matchup that could boost passing volume. If we knew all of this a month ago, we'd be tripping over ourselves to play Olave. He's the cover boy for me this week. I mean, I'm hoping that, people will be more excited about Kamara, and in the passing game, they're like, well, Shaheed's really the talk of the town here. But like returning to the priors here, I mean, Olave is in a much better situation than we thought, and he's still Chris Olave.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think he was my buy low on ADP chasing this past week. He's certainly someone I think that everyone should be targeting in your redraft leagues. I think he's probably a good DFS play, all of those things. Last note on the Saints, then we'll move on here. Just on like I get a lot when I was posting about Shaheed and Olave. I was getting a lot of people saying, well, if Shaheed's good, that means Olave is going to be bad. And if Kamara is good, that means the receivers are going to be bad. This has the potential to be the most 3-person concentrated offense in the NFL. This stat is insane. The Saints have run 11 personnel, so 3 wide receiver sets at just a 22% rate so far this season. Now, obviously, that's skewed by game strip a little bit, sure. But their 3rd wide receivers right now are like Mason Tipton, Cedric Wilson, Bub Means. They're running tons of formations with multiple tight ends on the field. Jawan Johnson,
They have
Foster
Cedric
Moreau.
Wilson.
Yeah.
Did I say?
Yeah. Yeah. People
crazy.
don't even know he's on the team. But anyways, point being is like it's Olave, Shaheed, and then a bunch of guys at tight end and wide receiver who don't earn targets at all. So I do think like we don't think of Shaheed and Olave so far through their careers as like 25-30% target share guys. I think we can see that in games this season. So I don't think it's necessarily like a one or the other conversation going forward this season. I think
agree.
they both can eat. Let's move on here to the Bears at the Colts. Starting here on the Colts side of the ball, I think a hot topic in fantasy land is, can Anthony Richardson bring along the Colts top stars along with him in his big games? He hasn't really done that so far. So starting with the wide receivers, Crane, what do you think the wide receiver rotation looks like this week with Josh Downs back? And can we trust like any of these wide receivers in fantasy? Michael Pittman, Adonai Mitchell, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs. What do we do with this? It feels like a mess to me.
It is a mess. I think, Alec Pierce just refused to go away. Credit to him. But that's going to complicate things for us because we don't really want to play him. And we saw over the last couple weeks that AD Mitchell's actually running a bit more out of the slot. He has a 52% slot rate. Pierce is at 30%. Pittman's at 20%. What happens when a slot receiver comes back, right? It's probably hurting Mitchell the most. And I feel more confident in saying that because Mitchell's already running the fewest routes. He's at 70% route participation. Pierce is at 89%. Pittman's at 89%. So Mitchell has not won the job over Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce is one of the high points of their offense right now. So my guess is that Downs comes in and plays, kind of a part-time role in his first game back. Mitchell kind of goes from 70% route participation down into the 50s or low 60s, 59, 62, something in there, right? Then Pierce probably comes down a bit as part of that rotation. And Pittman just runs all the routes as usual. But I think this leaves us with Pittman. But I mean, I've never been that excited about Pittman with Anthony Richardson. It was a huge fade for me in best ball. Kind of thought he was like going 2 to 3 rounds too early. I mean, I just never got the ADP at all. He's seeing targets. He's got a 28% target share, but he's not part of what Richardson does best. He's got a 10.9 ADOT. Pierce is at 25.3. Mitchell's at 18.4. Like, these are the guys that are going to unlock those big plays. And we know that Richardson is struggling to be consistent, but he can hit a couple plays that make, a wide receiver's day and, create a lot of upside for Richardson himself. I don't know if Pittman's like a big part of that, but at the same time, he's the only one that I feel confident in projecting any kind of target share for. So, yeah, I think you got to play it through Pittman in redraft, but I'm not excited about, trying to target Pittman for weekly games.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just quickly on Alec Pierce, like I did a quick, just watching of how he's played the past couple of weeks. I think, even though we want to write off Alec Pierce, and he wasn't a guy that was drafted in best ball, kind of a guy through 2 years in his career that we've wanted to write off. I mean, his skill set meshes with Anthony Richardson infinitely better than it did with Gardner Minshew. And I think that explains a little bit of how bad he was last year, just kind of like a pure wind sprinter. Like, Gardner Minshew isn't good at getting the ball to guys 50 yards down the field in the way that Anthony Richardson can.
Are you saying Trey Tucker's actually a star?
Yeah, Trey Tucker's an under the radar star for sure in Las Vegas. But yeah, man, Alec Pierce, just as a reminder, this is a guy who was 6'3", 211 pounds, ran a 4.41 40 at the combine, second round pick. Like this isn't some like Demarcus Robinson level, like scrubby veteran. Like this is a guy still on his rookie contract. The team has some commitment to next year. I don't think he's going away anytime soon. Now, can you play him in fantasy? I don't think so. Maybe really large field millie maker stuff like
showdown. We're
Yeah,
already doing showdown on this game.
Yeah, showdown. I think
Yeah.
Alec Pierce is probably a great showdown play because he just needs one. He just needs one
Yeah.
catch. But
the thing too with Pierce as a prospect, there were like some of the film stuff on him was that he was open a lot more than he had, opportunities.
Well, who was his quarterback, Pat?
Desmond Ridder. I mean,
Yeah,
this guy has had such bad deep throwers, outside of Richardson. So now with Richardson, and by the way, I had a huge bag of Alec Pierce last year in best ball. So, never wrong, just early.
Yeah, never wrong, just early. Yeah. Oh, man. I'll let you get in your sack. Any thoughts? We'll get to the Jonathan Taylor part of the conversation too, but any thoughts on the pass catchers? I kind of think Pat's right that it's Pittman or bust, at least in week 3.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even really interested in Pittman in week 3. I don't think I'm playing any of these pass catchers. If you're like really set on playing Anthony Richardson, which I don't really know that you should be, because even if Richardson has a good game, like I don't think the Bears are going to be able to push the Colts to have to put up a lot of points. So it's not a super attractive fantasy spot to me overall. I mean.
Yeah,
now
Bears defense too, right? Like,
yeah. And now that I've said that, I'm sure that Alec Pierce is going to do like a 2 for 150 and 2 type of game. I think every week that Alec Pierce just like buries us further with the stat line, I'm just going to increase his athletic measurables by like a little bit, so he sounds even crazier of a prospect. So now he's like 6'5", 240 pounds, 4.22. Guy's just an absolute superhuman. But no, yeah, not terribly interested in this game from a fantasy perspective. If you really, really wanted to play it, then I think that you do Anthony Richardson and you probably just roll him out naked.
Yeah.
That's the way I do it.
This is not a great matchup for Richardson.
Right.
Bears defense is good.
No. And the Bears defense is going to be really strong. I also wanted to get to Jonathan Taylor here. We had some debate in our rest of season rankings, talking about Kamara, Kamara versus Taylor. I think we ultimately landed on Taylor, but I do think it's a conversation. I think it's at least fair to say that it's a conversation. How concerned should we be about Taylor specifically in this matchup versus the Bears, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, I think the upside case for Taylor is that the Colts offensive line has been really good at run blocking this season. They're first in ESPN's run block win rate, which uses the player tracking data, but they're also first in PFF's run blocking grades. So the charters and the trackers are in agreement here. And then the stats back up, that they've been very consistent on the ground. They're 6th in rushing success rate. So this is a really good run blocking line, really good running game. They're going up against a Bears defense that's really good against the run. They're 2nd in run stop win rate. So strength on strength here. But we also have Jonathan Taylor, who is really popping in the rushing metrics. And, this was the question. It was, we were heading into the season. Can Jonathan Taylor rewind the clock like 3 seasons and get back to the efficiency that he had before the Colts kind of just fell apart? He's young enough to where I was like, yeah, I mean, he probably can. He wasn't a huge target for me, but I was open to the idea. And 61% success rate currently in NFL Next Gen, that's RB3. He's averaging 22 rush yards over expected per game. That's RB6. So he's really impressed. I think for this week, I want Kamara for sure. But Taylor is, it's like one of those things like you drafted Taylor. He's getting all the work. He's RB2 in attempt share. Like this is, you roll with him. And I think even though he's in a tough matchup, they're still going to make a big effort to get him going. And he's got a really good run blocking line. So I think he's an RB1.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. How I'm kind of viewing Taylor is like prime Derrick Henry, but with less of the goal line share on his team because of Anthony Richardson. Like, he's a really talented rusher in a really good offensive situation for offensive efficiency. He's just not going to catch any passes. There's going to be frustrating games where, we even saw Trey Sherman, play over him in 2-minute drill stuff. So frustrating, annoying stuff like that, where he's not on the field all the time, not on the field in passing situations. But again, we're talking about one of the NFL's most talented rushers. I think they're going to be big games here. It's just going to be frustrating and more volatile than a lot of running backs in the NFL. This is Dwayne McFarland's utilization score. This takes into account, rushing attempts, routes. It's kind of like a grade of a player's overall usage and role. Jonathan Taylor's outside of the top 20 in that metric. Now, prime Derrick Henry, I believe, would also have been outside of top 20 in this metric and still smash all the time, right? So it's not the end-all be-all, but I think it's just a way to view Taylor as sort of a frustratingly low-volume guy at times, particularly in the passing game. But I do agree with those notes. Really, really talented rusher. Sack, anything else on Jonathan Taylor in this matchup versus the Bears?
Yeah, it's not a spot I'm super excited about. Bears have strong defense against the run, and like I said, it looks like a low-scoring game to me. So really, like, if you're trying to figure out a way to get there to play Jonathan Taylor in like DFS or Battle Royale, you're like, I guess he gets all the touchdowns the Colts score, like all 2 of them or something. So I don't know. It's not super exciting to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's move on here to an even maybe less exciting side of things, the Bears offense. I think people might be tempted to play this one, actually, because the Colts defense looks like the worst in the league. I think they're giving up the most rushing yards in the league. I think second to only the Rams in terms of total yardage given up this season. What are we doing with the Bears here? Is there any hope in this plus matchup against the Colts?
Yeah, I think there is some hope. I mean, I did a deep dive on Caleb Williams in the walkthrough this week, highlighting this this analysis that I did last year when looking at Sam Howell. And what Sam Howell, one of the things that he really struggled with was that he wouldn't come off of his first read and then something bad would happen. Like he would take a sack or he'd throw an interception or he'd just throw the ball away, but he never like checked out what else was going on. Like he was just like locked into the one thing, and he's patient. He's letting it play out. He's letting it play out. He's letting it play out. Plays over. So that kind of style can work okay if you get time to throw, and you can actually see the reads play out. And then like Howell, when he was on, was pretty fun because he would like hit plays downfield. And he was willing to hang in the pocket and take hits if necessary. Caleb's a little different. He's not hanging in the pocket and taking those hits so much. He's scrambling around, but he's got the same thing going on where he's seeing a really high rate of his plays, the highest rate in the league currently, where he's not coming off the first read and then the play is dying. He does get a Colts defense, though, that has not been good against first reads this year. So, like, maybe there's something there, but they also do get pressure. So, and they've gotten pressure pretty quickly. They're 5th in time to pressure this year, 15th in pressure rate. They're 8th in pass rush get off per NFL Next Gen. So they are getting to the passer pretty quickly when they get pressure. They blitz a little bit. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not I came down to feeling like not yet. That was where I think there's maybe like some bright spots in this matchup where maybe they're just going to let him have, they're not going to try to work to take away the first read as much. And, he's able to connect a little bit more there. We're seeing, like, for example, DJ Moore only has a 10% first read target rate, which is really bad. But that doesn't mean that DJ Moore isn't like a part of what their play calls are. It probably means that DJ Moore is the first read and then he's getting sacked or he's throwing the ball away, right? Like the offense isn't working as intended. And so we're not seeing Moore get the targets that Shane Waldron would like him to get. Rome Odunze is also at 10% in this. So we're seeing that, kind of be a problem where the guys who probably should be getting the ball just aren't. there's kind of plays getting sucked out of the offense by these failed first read plays on Williams. So there is some, like, if the offense starts clicking, all of a sudden we could see, they actually do want to involve DJ Moore and Rome Odunze a lot more and haven't been able to. To me, Keenan Allen getting back on the field would be really big. He's actually been able to draw targets and seems to have a connection with Caleb Williams. Maybe not that fat after all. He's actually leading them with 31% targets per out run. Yeah.
He's had a couple weeks off with the heel injury.
So is that bad? You put on pounds?
I don't know, man. If you can't run.
Yeah. But overall, I was just like, I think this is probably, I'm not panicking over Williams. I think he could show us a little bit more this week. But as far as like, okay, things are going to get back on track here, let's go. I think we're probably not to that point yet in this matchup.
Yeah. I just want to say on DJ Moore, he was matched up, I think, a lot of last week with Derek Stingley on the Texans, who looked like he completely eliminated him from the game. So I think that's what's skewing some of the target share stuff. I don't know if they were avoiding him, but not really like a pro or con for Moore. The fact that he got wiped out, I do think Stingley's one of the better corners in the league, but certainly not a plus that he can get taken out of the game like that in that matchup. Sack, what are your thoughts here on the Bears rushing side of things? I know you're a huge DeAndre Swift fan. You always have been. But this does set up for a matchup for the Bears to run the ball, right? Worst rush defense in the league. The defense should keep them in a good game script. Is there any rushing angle here we can play with the Bears versus the Colts?
The short answer is no. I think this is like one of those classic trap situations where people get out over their skis because they see the Colts have been really bad against the run, and so I'm going to attack them through no one's going to see it coming when I play DeAndre Swift. It's like, yeah, no one's going to see it coming because it was a bad idea. And I think the you've got something working against you in two ways here. Number one, DeAndre Swift has not been very good, and the Bears offensive line is not, they're certainly not helping him. But number two is the Bears are beginning to realize that, and like they don't want to. They're like trying their hardest to not realize that they really should not give DeAndre Swift the bulk of the carries. But just last week, we saw them give Khalil Herbert, the important goal line carry. They're like,
we would like to score this touchdown. Actually, let's put.
We do need this one to work. The other one, whatever. Who cares about the low calorie touches? We'll give those. We can make DeAndre happy. He can get all those. But like the important ones, let's give those to Khalil Herbert. So I think that we're at the beginning of the end for the DeAndre Swift workload. And I really don't want to find that out by playing DeAndre Swift and then watching Khalil Herbert, vulture 2 touchdowns and like all of a sudden be efficient on the ground against a bad rush defense. So I think like even in the good outcomes for the Bears rushing game, it's probably split between 2 backs. Maybe you get Herbert that gets the rushing touchdown and like 6 or 7 carries, and Swift gets, 8 to 10 carries and a couple targets, but it's just not enough. It's split between the 2 guys, and I still am not confident that this rushing attack will even be good. And then I also kind of think this might be a spot where I don't think the Bears coaching staff is particularly good. I think Shane Waldron is wildly incompetent, and so I'm trying to, I hit my head.
Are the first OC fired lines?
Yeah, he would be a smash. But to try and get myself in his headspace, I smash my head into the wall really, really hard, 3 or 4 times, and then I watch a little game film, and I'm like, all right, what would I think right now with all this brain damage? And I think what you could interpret if you were not good at your job is, gosh, Caleb can't get anything done down the field. You mentioned a really good stat in the walkthrough, Pat, that his average depth of target is 7.3. So he's willing to take shots down the field, 15% deep pass rate. He's willing to be aggressive, but he's not completing any of them. And so I think the incorrect takeaway that you might get to if you're a bad offensive coordinator is, well, that's clearly not working. So let's just scrap that. Everything is going to be all this short yardage stuff, especially if Keenan Allen misses and it's just, Rome Odunze and DJ Moore out there as their pass catching weapons. They already tried why don't we do a bunch of short screens to Gerald Everett? It's like, okay, nope, that didn't work. So I think Shane Waldron's he's crossing that off on the yellow legal pad that he does for like ideas to not suck. He's like, okay, Gerald Everett didn't work. Fuck. And so I think now what you're going to get to is, well, the deep passes didn't work and the running isn't working and Gerald Everett didn't work. But you know what? We just extended DJ Moore with all this money and we didn't get him involved last week. Maybe that was the problem. I think you're going to see all this short manufactured stuff for DJ Moore, these targets, the line of scrimmage, just running through the air with DJ Moore. And so if you're wanting to play this game, it could be like one of those vintage. We saw this with DJ Moore last year too, where it was like Justin Fields only has eyes for him. They're just locked on him, and it's all this little bubble screen dink and dunk stuff, and they just let him go make plays after the catch. I kind of think that is, if you think that the Bears have a decent day on offense, that to me is what's most likely for them to think is what's going to be successful. And so I think that's probably like the highest probability outcome if they are successful.
Yeah, on Swift, he's got 0.51 yards per route run. So, he could, it's not like, I think he's in the RB2 discussion, for redraft and stuff. It's not like he can't produce. He could rip off some long runs. He could rip off a long pass. He is still, got speed. He looks like once he kind of gets into that second gear, you're like, oh, okay. But he's just not a very good runner.
Does he look smaller in a Bears uniform? That's what I've been.
I think he's been shrinking every year.
He looks really, really small to me. It doesn't look right.
But like he's not. I don't think he's going to like punish you through the air. He's got a 13% targets per route run. That's RB41. He's out there a lot, but he's not like a huge part of what they're trying to do. And I agree with Zach. I mean, I think if anything, they would be trying to get DJ Moore rolling. If you think about like what receiver could explode, I do think it's more. I noted the first read target rate of 10% that he shares with Rome Odunze, but he has a targets per route run of 22%. Odunze is at 10%. So Odunze is not really earning any target. And he's struggling with an injury, but he's not earning targets over what like the play calls would be kind of giving him, and Moore is. So yeah, in a better, an easier matchup. I guess the question would be, does he face more double coverage though? Because he's only at 19% this year, which is in the 29th percentile for wide receivers. So they haven't tried to take him away. Like Stingley was able to take him away on his own, but the Colts double team at the 5th highest rate. So yeah, I don't really like this game.
Yeah, if I was gonna play it, I would go to like DJ Moore. I don't think I would play him with Caleb. I think as a standalone piece, I think he's interesting because I totally agree with Zach's point. Like the complete lack of schemed targets to DJ Moore. Like why are we throwing screens to Keenan Allen and DeAndre Carter over DJ Moore? You have like an A+ yak weapon in DJ Moore, in my opinion, and some not so good yak weapons and other guys. So I think that's a logical attempted fix from Shane Waldron. But yeah, if there was a first OC fired betting market out there, Waldron's got a couple fall guys he can eliminate first. He can try to bench Swift for Khalil Herbert. That's probably the first fall guy. Then it's gonna be benching Gerald Everett for Cole Kmet. That's gonna be the second fall guy. If neither of those work, it might be over for a guy Shane.
It's not looking
you know what is really fun though, Sam? You're getting Rome Odunze is just eerily following the JSN career arc. Early injury to his rookie season to derail him, getting stymied by poor offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron. And so maybe you have this lost season for Rome Odunze like you did JSN.
But a year from today.
And then we can hammer him. We can hammer him in best ball drafts next year. So I'm keeping my eye on that.
That is that is a little too close to home for me with my Rome Odunze bags. But I did get on JSN this year famously. I was a wrist injury truther. But yeah, Shane Waldron needs to figure this out. This offense is like the memory of a Kyle Shanahan offense without any of the
it's execution. Inception like 4 levels down. They're laying on the train tracks.
Yeah, it's ugly. Let's move on here to Texans Vikings. The Vikings, another I think up there with the Saints. That's probably the second most unexpectedly good team in the NFL through 2 weeks, led by Sam Darnold. I want to start on the Vikings side of things here. How legitimate is Sam Darnold? And should we trust him against the Texans defense that just made Caleb Williams look completely silly on Monday night? Starting with you, Pat. I guess I'm talking, can we trust him? I'm saying, is he like a top 15, top 20 quarterback, maybe in super flex leagues, or should you be looking elsewhere?
I'm not sure if I'm like there. I mean, I'm not like far from there, I guess, but I think I trust Kevin O'Connell is what it comes down to. I think Kevin O'Connell's doing a really good job designing this offense. But Darnold how healthy is Justin Jefferson? That's what matters, right? He's got Justin Jefferson to throw to. He's willing to make those throws, as we saw last week. And his efficiency has been very good. Like, if you look at EPA per play, he's above Brock Purdy right now. But his success rate has not been good. His success rate's actually very similar to Anthony Richardson's. It's below guys like Gardner Minshew, Justin Herbert, who has not been great this year. So I think he's probably a negative regression candidate, kind of the more you look under the hood. But to me, it really would come down to, does he have Jefferson? If Addison can get back, that would be a big deal. But he's getting a Texans defense that's been pretty good. I mean, they're third in pressure rate. They're fifth in pass rush get off. They're fifth in pass rush win rate. And they're also pretty good in coverage. They're eighth in coverage grade per PFF. They're sixth in preventing explosive plays. So this is, I actually think this is probably a harder matchup than he got last week.
Yeah.
Even though the 49ers have the better reputation.
I mean, so far this year, the Texans have basically, going back to Alec Pierce thing, they've basically given up 2 big plays to Alec Pierce, and that's about all they've given up in the passing game through 2 weeks this season. They've been pretty rock solid against the pass here. I am assuming on Jefferson and Addison, we did get reports Addison did not practice yesterday. Jefferson did. I'm making the assumption Jefferson, or actually, I'm not sure if Jefferson practiced, but he was quoted as saying he's going to play. So I am assuming Jefferson in, Addison still out. With that assumption, what pass catchers are we looking at from the Vikings in this matchup, Zach? Justin Jefferson obviously locked in your starting lineups, but maybe more perspective on how strong of a play you think he is and whether there's any other secondary pieces we can look at here, assuming that Addison is out.
Yeah, I think Jefferson is, regardless of the matchup, Jefferson is going to pretty much always be a strong play week in and week out. If he's available, he's just that good. The thing that I'm most concerned about is that this game gets boring. Like, the Texans get to a lead, and because the Texans are willing to run the ball, 30 plus times a game. So if you're rooting for a fun game, you want Vikings to get the ball first, and you want them to score. You do not want the Texans to get control of this one, because they could really snuff out any chance of a fun game here if they really get a hold of it early and slow the game down. But I think they're willing to pass if the game is competitive and the Vikings can get out to a lead. As far as like Darnold and how he could do against this defense, I think we have to look at Darnold like we would look at any quarterback in a Shanahan scam type system. Like, the system is designed so well, the quarterback almost doesn't matter. Like, you might even be able to put Bryce Young in there and have it be okay. Probably not.
No. Come on,
but what I'm saying is, like, you just have to like cover up the name of the quarterback when they're in one of these offenses, because the name is distracting to you. Like, you're thinking, oh, Sam Darnold, he's not good. He's been terrible everywhere. It's like, nope, doesn't matter. He's in this, super efficient system for a quarterback that gives the easy button type stuff. So I think if you're, struggling because you're like, oh, Sam Darnold against a good defense, like, just cover up the name. Like, don't worry about that. As far as other pass catchers that are interesting, I mean, I'm assuming that Addison is out as well. And so Jalen Naylor is a little interesting to me. He's a pretty deep option, though. Like, you're probably just using him as salary relief in DFS. And if you are playing him, I think that you probably want to be playing this game to shoot out. And so you'd probably want to bring it back with like a Houston receiver. I also think that Johnny Munt is not a terrible tight end punt play. like on the battle royale, like on the 12-man drafts, like dog bowl or goal line.
Mhm.
I don't think he's a bad play at all. He's out there, he's getting targets. Like you could do worse, He's in like probably right around or slightly worse than Pat Fryermuth tier for me as far as plays this week. But yeah, Munt, Naylor, and Jefferson are really like the only three guys that I would be considering this week.
Yeah, I mean, like if you have thought about playing Kate Otten in whatever format you're doing, then Johnny Munt's like very much in play. Like that's where if you thought about playing Noah Fant, then you should think about Johnny Munt. Like would you guys be Munt or Cole Kmet?
Munt.
Yeah.
I mean, neither. Come on. What are we doing?
I'm Munt. Yeah. Johnny Munt's been out there a bunch. I mean, he actually has a role. Now, I mean, it's obviously going to evaporate when Hawkinson gets back, but he's got a 13% target share, 14% targets per out run. He's running a decent amount of routes. Like again, you need to be down here scrounging around in the first place. But if you are, he's one of those guys.
I need to know the Johnny Munt play action participation rate, Pat. I gotta know if he's a get paper kind of guy. Can I trust him for like just stealing?
I do. I didn't need to calculate that. Yeah. I mean, we're dealing with small samples here, but I'll figure that out. Yeah.
I'll be honest. There's some tight ends where I just completely rule them out, like based on what their name sounds like. Like Johnny Munt, that's a blocking tight end. Like Jordan Akins.
Yeah, it is kind of blocker. Yeah.
Yeah, like even like Tucker Kraft, like I ruled him out just based on the name for a while. I'm like, come on, Tucker Kraft, that's a fullback name. That's not a
Pharaoh Brown had, he had me in the first half, like Pharaoh and then but Brown is such a blocking tight end last name.
I mean, you don't want to be part of the Munt mob, Sam? I mean, that's a fun.
I don't know. That sounds
we
like
play Johnny Munt and be part of the Munt mob this week. It sounds fun.
That sounds like some kind of Zoomer slang that I don't really want to know what it means. The Munt mob, but I'll distance myself from the Munt mob. But let's go here to the Texans backfield. We're talking about how the Texans are might run all over the Vikings here, but breaking news here: Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce are both missing from practice Friday for the Texans. I think it's going to be the Cam Akers show in Houston. Pat, is that your read on the situation? And is he suddenly like a pretty intriguing play with both those guys potentially out?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to take Cam Akers pretty seriously, I guess, just as far as a volume play goes. They are very willing to run the ball, as you said. In fact, like I have this chart that I share in the walkthrough, and it's broken into 4 quadrants, and there's teams in the upper left that are running the ball in scripts where they actually probably should be passing the ball a little bit more. And the Texans are one of those teams. Now, normally this is teams that are this is like where the Titans are, right? This is where the Dolphins are after, a big dose of Skylar Thompson. The team's generally kind of hiding their quarterback a little bit. So don't love to see that for the Texans. They're still kind of playing a little overly conservatively, I would say. They go up against a Vikings run defense that's pretty solid. They're 5th in run stop win rate. They're 11th in EPL out per rush, only 20th in rushing success rate. So they're not like an amazing run defense, but I don't think like super vulnerable. And it's Cam Akers, but if he's now in position to consolidate a ton of volume, so he's definitely in the mix.
You agree there, Sack, on Cam Akers' good volume play week 3?
Yeah, I've been jamming him in the dog bowl these last couple days before the news had really crystallized that Mixon was going to miss, because I was reading it going that direction. So now I'm a little bummed out that it seems like the cat's going to be out of the bag and Akers is going to probably start screaming up. But he seems like a pretty solid play this week. I really like, from a portfolio standpoint, I think that, you could really have an interesting way to play this game where you play quite a bit of Akers with no other pieces from this game. If the Texans make it boring, and you're just like, well, this is a really cheap running back who I'm getting a lot of touches for. And then in some other lineups, you play a good amount of, the pass catchers with bringbacks, possibly either of the quarterbacks as well. and don't have the running back in there and just play that the game is high scoring, the Texans don't end up having to lean into Cam Akers. And so that way, from a portfolio standpoint, you can kind of cover your bases here, because I think that's an interesting way to play it.
I will note that Cam Akers got into the game after Mixon sprained his ankle last week. He had a goal line fumble in a huge portion of the game. This wasn't like garbage time mop-up situation. This was a fumble that actually gave the Bears a chance to get back in the game. So that was ugly. He got benched after that. I don't think we saw him after that, and it was Dare Gumbawale that was trusted at the very end. So just a minor red flag that I do think it's going to be Akers. I'd project him to lead the backfield, but is his leash very long? I don't think so.
I mean, this dude, he's bouncing around the league at this point, right? He got himself traded from the Rams. Be careful what you wish for, kind of thing. That's a really good note. That with Cam Akers, you got to be careful because the floor is always pretty low.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what you're paying for him or where you're getting him in drafts. So like, you're choosing between Cam Akers or Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like
Cam Akers there for sure.
Yeah, those are both fine, and I'm okay that I know the bottom can drop out, and we can get a healthy dose of Dare Gumbawale instead.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about the Andy Dalton renaissance later. That might change the conversation here, but I did want to get to the Texans pass catchers here to close out this game. Nico Collins in the data on tape, he's emerging as the clear alpha wide receiver here. I'm curious, Pat, how you see the pecking order going after him. I think it's kind of not a debate at this point that he's the wide receiver 1, but it is a debate who the wide receiver 2 is here. Any preference between Stephon Diggs or Tank Dell, and anything in the matchup data here that's telling you who the better play is versus the Vikings?
Yeah, I mean, I think to the Nico point, yes, he is looking like an absolute superstar right now. I mean, he leads them in all the target metrics and stuff, but I think it's even more impressive than what those metrics would suggest, because he's seen double coverage on 41% of his routes, which is in the 96th percentile for wide receivers, and the other guys aren't really getting doubled that much. I mean, they're getting doubled some, but Diggs is at 25%, Dell at 27%. So Collins is like opening up stuff for them, and yet he's the one getting targeted, So this is some real like true alpha wide receiver type stuff that we're seeing from Nico Collins. Pretty exciting. Diggs and Dell, I think, are pretty close in terms of what their role is. I have a slight preference for Diggs. He leads in the first read target data fairly significantly. He's in the 57th percentile there. Dell in the 23rd percentile. He's the new addition. He was a captain. Like, I think as far as like right now, as we sit in the early part of the season, who the coaches are making like more of an effort to kind of involve, I think it's probably Diggs. But their underlying roles outside of that are super similar. Targets per route run 18% for Diggs, 17% for Dell. So, and if anything, if you were going to make the Dell argument, you'd be like, well, he is probably the better bet to have an explosive play. He's got a 14.4 ADOT. Diggs is at only 5.4. So it's like Diggs, you're saying like, okay, he's going to get targeted more, but like to what end? Like, is he going to rack up volume? Probably not, because Nico is there and they're not going to pass a ton. So maybe Diggs is a little safer, but Dell's like kind of more the home run shot. So, if you were in a spot where you're like, I want a little bit more of the upside, then I maybe would go to Dell.
That makes sense. There is a pretty big highlight reel of Tank Dell near big play so far this season. I think Adam Levitan circulated that on X over the past couple of days. He's had some really close, almost big plays this year for Tank Dell. So definitely not in full panic mode there. Sack, anything to add on the Texans wide receiver situation this week?
Not really. I agree with everything Pat said there. I've been trying to draft more Tank Dell on Underdog in the battle royales. He seems like a fun play this week. And sadly, we're not giving any credence to the Stephon Diggs 2 teams removed revenge game narrative. But
oh man,
forgot about that. That's
who's even getting revenge on? Like, is anyone there? He's
getting the idea of revenge.
The idea of revenge. Was that Zimmer when he was there?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It was many
Yeah.
moons ago.
Yeah.
There's probably
Wait,
not
Zimmer's
anyone
with
left.
the Cowboys, right? Who's Zimmer with now? The Cowboys, right?
Yeah, he's with the Cowboys.
Yeah.
He's responsible for that awful performance against Alvin Kamara.
Yeah. All right. We'll move on here to our final game. Oh, I did want to say back to the I'm a little bit late on this, but the Cam Akers stuff. I believe there was a Davis Maddock, Pete Overzet, Cam Akers versus Carson Steele bet this offseason. That is really heating up this week. So
Whoa. Wow.
everyone watch out for that in week 3. That things are really heating up there. Huge games for Akers and Steele on deck.
Damn.
Let's get to the Raiders and Panthers, our final game of the week. Starting here on the more exciting side. Sorry, Panthers fans. The Raiders offense has looked surprisingly good through 2 weeks. Upset victory over the Ravens in week 2. Let's start with Brock Bowers here. Pat, is Brock Bowers top 2, top 3, top 5 tight end this week, even in a potentially terrible game script versus the lowly Panthers?
Yeah, I think he's top 2. He's getting a ton of targets. So when I dug into the numbers on Bowers, I got more excited and less excited. I got more excited about Brock Bowers, the player. I got a little bit less excited about what he's going to be doing over the next few weeks. The reason for that is that his first 3 targets were good, not great. 83rd percentile there for a tight end, and not super high by wide receiver standards. So, are we going to keep getting him just getting peppered with targets over these upcoming weeks? I don't know if we will. I mean, he's certainly capable of earning the targets. He's got a 27% targets per out run, and again, that's not supported by like play calling that's driving targets toward him, which is a really good sign for him, the player, and his ability to earn targets. He's also not been used on screens. 2 of his 16 targets have been screens, which is not a particularly high rate. So, he's having to go out there and earn the targets himself. He's doing that, and that should only bolster our opinion of him as an NFL talent. But like, what is this offense going to be doing this week? I think it's possible that they end up kind of going through Adams a little bit more here, and he very much is who the offense is designed to go through. Given this matchup, I think we could be looking at them kind of designing a little bit more stuff to Adams, and I think Bowers is probably. I guess I don't know in the short term if he's going to kind of keep up this amazing start, but I think when we zoom out, we're talking about Bowers probably being, the tight end 1 in drafts next year. I think we're already to like that kind of because I think Adams is probably gone after the season. So this is not me pouring any cold water on Bowers' profile from like who he is, but is the offense built to get Bowers the ball? Not yet. He's still getting the ball, which is awesome.
Yeah, I just want to say on the Bauer stuff, I did chart him with 4 screens over the first 2 weeks. I think one of them maybe was called back by penalty, and another one was maybe an incomplete screen that was knocked out of line of scrimmage. So I do think like there's a little bit more concerted involvement than that 2 number through 2 weeks. But still agree there that this Panthers matchup, I'm not overly excited by that. Sack, thoughts here on any additional thoughts on Bowers?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've heard this week is that the Panthers are so bad and the Raiders do want to run the ball. They just haven't been able to have success doing it yet. But they finally get an opponent where they might actually be able to have some success running the ball. And so that might mean, less attempts through the air. So, not quite as exciting for Bowers or Adams. But one of the things that we saw in the preseason was they're willing to line Bowers up in the backfield. They're willing to scheme him touches in the running game as well, So I think he hasn't had any rushing attempts so far this season. I would not be surprised if this is the game where he gets on the board with a rushing attempt. And also, he has not scored a touchdown yet this season. And one of the things that I just always stick with when I'm trying to find a tight end to play in like a weekly or daily format is I'm really looking for teams that are at home as a favorite against a bad defense where they could put up multiple touchdowns, that's where, you can really try and squeeze every last bit of juice out of that tight end touchdown equity. And so if I'm playing Bowers this week, it's because I think that he's going to, break that touchdownless streak so far for his career, and he might be involved in the running game more than he has been so far this season.
I mentioned the matchup kind of driving things towards Adams. What I meant by that is that the Panthers blitz at a high rate. They're blitzing at the fourth highest rate. And then in 2023, they had the same defensive coordinator. And Ajiro Evero blitzed at the fifth highest rate in 2023. So he blitzes. And against the blitz so far this season, Adams is at a 41% targets per out run. Bowers is at 13%. And that kind of goes with the idea that the first read target data indicates that like he's kind of the number one option on a lot of these plays. So that's where I'm like thinking that maybe this particular matchup kind of like highlights the offensive design a little bit more, which still very much favors Adams. But, it's not fun to be like a little bit of a tiny little Bowers bear this week. Because I think the larger point is that Bowers looks like a superstar.
He does, to my eye as well. Top two tight end for me rest of the season. And yeah, quickly on Sack's note about getting involved in the running game. He did take at least one snap out of the backfield. I might have missed another one, but I saw one play where he was lined up as a running back in shotgun in week 2. So I do think we'll see creative usage of him in the rushing game eventually. They're already getting him going in screens like we talked about. So rushing isn't too far away from that. Let's see here. Devontae, I think we should talk about the Devontae Adams side of things a little bit more. Pat's given his opinion. Zach, are you excited in playing him? Would you rank him as like a top 10 wide receiver this week against the Panthers?
Yeah, I think he's right on that line, right? He's right around top 10 for me. Probably like just slightly inside it, like number 9, number 10, number 8 for the week. So yeah, I'm still very open to playing him. I do think what Pat pointed out when they're blitzed, Adams is the go-to guy, is some really good insight. But I definitely like to lean into team level trends like that. So certainly open to playing Adams this week.
Got it.
Yeah, we've got him at wide receiver 11 right now, and I could see him even coming up a little bit from there.
Yeah, and I think part of that is how competitive do we expect the Panthers to be on the other side of the ball? We can get to that part of the conversation now. Big news in the NFL this week. Bryce Young shockingly benched after just 2 games into the second year of his career with the Panthers. Really, really surprising that he had this short of a leash. The team goes to Andy Dalton, who did look pretty good, I thought last year in his limited playing time when Bryce was out with injury, I believe. Starting with you, Pat, how much better is Andy Dalton than Bryce Young? And can this offense become a league average offense with Andy Dalton under center?
Yeah, Andy Dalton is significantly better than what Bryce Young has been. Maybe, at his core, right? He's the gap is smaller. Maybe there's more there than we've seen. But what we have seen is the worst quarterback in the league going back to at least 2020. I pulled up the EPA and success rate, EPA per game and success rate for all these quarterbacks with a minimum of 500 dropbacks going back to 2020. Young is like not even really in the same tier as Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson was like meaningfully better.
Yikes.
In both.
Is he worse than Trey Lance?
He's getting Josh Rosen.
Well, Lance didn't get enough attempts.
Okay, so it's too early.
We didn't go far enough back for Rosen. Yeah. So he's Lance probably would be worse, but Young's actually dropped back enough to be on this chart. Dalton was actually pretty good in success rate and not very good in EPA per play, but not horrendous, like in the Daniel Jones zone, kind of near Mitch Trubisky, right? Like he's kind of close to Jacoby Brissett. Those are huge it's a huge upgrade to go. Think about last year with Zach Wilson. Like, how much would you have paid to go, to have Andy Dalton throwing it to Garrett Wilson instead of Zach Wilson? Young has been worse. Young has actually been worse than Wilson so far. So it's a huge upgrade for the whole offense. I think in particular for Deontay Johnson. If you were gonna pull in any backup quarterback for, who would Deontay Johnson really want? He'd give me an Andy Dalton type, right? Give me someone who's going to execute the first read, at a decent rate. And Deontay Johnson is 92nd percentile in first read target rate. He is the guy that they are trying to get the ball. They said that he would be in the offseason, and they followed through on that. Adam Thielen is at just 9%. That's 27th percentile. He's at a 13% targets per out run, 13% target share. He's an afterthought, really. Leggett and Mingo are splitting routes. They're each getting a little bit involved, but Johnson, I think, very, very clearly who they want to be the engine of the passing attack, and I think Dalton can execute that, which is just a massive upgrade.
Yeah, just as a reminder, when we saw Dalton in the one game last year, 34-58 for 361 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I do think, obviously 58 pass attempts, that's unusual. That was a weird game script, but I think Dalton does have enough juice. And we saw Dave Canales, play pretty well with the Geno Smith reclamation project in Seattle, the Baker Mayfield reclamation project in Tampa Bay. I think he can turn Andy Dalton into a top 20 NFL quarterback and help these weapons out. Yeah, Sack, are you agree with Pat on Deontay Johnson being the huge beneficiary here? Maybe any hope for someone like Xavier Leggett? I suppose that's probably a longer term play than week 3 here versus the Raiders.
Yeah, definitely. Bring some optimism for Leggett. He's not someone that I want to play this week just because he's still splitting snaps with Jonathan Mingo for whatever godforsaken reason. But Deontay Johnson, I think, is a really, really interesting play this week, specifically for DFS on DraftKings. On Underdog, he's also fun. He goes 6th round a lot of the times in the 12-man draft, so going undrafted in the 6-person drafts. But it's only half PPR there, which really is not Deontay's game. Deontay is a PPR scam merchant. So on DraftKings, he's really fun. The
bonus also helps. We like the bonus with Deontay because I don't know what kind of touchdown equity we're getting.
Right. There's probably not a lot of touchdowns coming. But, if you can get me 13 receptions, for 100 yards, then we're cooking.
Yeah, that sounds great.
The other thing is, I think the input volatility is extremely high. The projection, the error bar on the projection for Deontay Johnson is through the freaking roof this week. I've got the ETR projection pulled up on Deontay Johnson. They just have him with 11.6 as his DK projection. That's almost 3 points behind Michael Pittman. That's almost a full point behind Demarcus Robinson. I think that it's going to be extremely difficult for anywhere that's doing projections to have a good projection on Deontay Johnson, just because what are we going to put for the inputs? How many attempts do we think Andy Dalton's going to have? You have, because it's not just we've seen Andy Dalton in this offense before. No, we haven't. This is a new offensive coordinator. We've seen him in this uniform before, but this is a new receiver that he didn't have last year when he stepped in and played for the Panthers. It's a new offensive coordinator, new system. So I think there's a lot of input volatility here. And I think this is those are the spots where you attack. I just think it's a pretty clear spot where you just smash Deontay Johnson. And if it doesn't work out, it was a good process play.
I like that call. I mean, this is a much better offense, we think, right? A much better designed offense, right? It's obviously been a horrendous offense in practice, but you're comparing, who are we more excited about as an offensive mind, Dave Canales or Frank Reich? And we've seen Canales get really good production out of Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, although Mayfield looks to have taken a step forward without him. But the reclamation project worked amazingly well last year with Baker. So I think this is one of those situations where you really could, Dalton could just show us a whole new version of this offense that has just been really obscured by incompetence. Young has just not been able to execute it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And last thing, really exciting topic to close the show out, but Chuba Hubbard, is he a plug your nose, similar thesis to Deontay Johnson? What do we think? He's a slightly above league average NFL running back, maybe in a better situation, maybe against a Raiders team that's not very good and they can run the ball. I don't know. I don't have any hot takes in this.
I like that we opened with the Saints and Eagles, but closing with Chuba Hubbard feels like we could have done better than that.
Yeah, we definitely could have. But
he seems fine. He's in the RB3 discussion.
Is it that different than Deontay? Just zooming out wise, I don't know.
No, I mean he's been okay. Like 44% success rate per NFL Next Gen's rush yards over expected metric, and he's been dead even with rush yards over expected per game. Like, given the state of the offense, like, it's pretty awesome. Like Miles Sanders is at an 8% success rate. 8%, 44 versus 8. Like he's got a moat. This dude has a moat to Sanders. I think if the offense is clicking, then yeah, Hubbard. I mean, I don't know, like in DFS and stuff, if I want to go to Hubbard, but I think he's in the if you're like, I think Hubbard's my best RB2 play this week, like, yeah, plug him in.
Well, yeah, he's at 5,200, I believe, on the main slate in DraftKings. He's like,
that doesn't feel like great.
Yeah, that doesn't feel like you're getting quite enough, but I don't know. Leave that one to the DFS experts. I don't have any real take there. He's definitely like maybe in play in larger field stuff as like a cheap option that I don't think will attract a ton of ownership, but would actually have to check on that. Sack, any last thoughts here?
I would be surprised.
Yeah, I'm with you, Sam, on what's the difference? Like, if we're excited about Deontay Johnson, why aren't we excited about Chuba Hubbard? And I am, because again, it's the input volatility thing, right?
Yeah,
what if the offense just looks good? So for DFS, yeah, 5,200, I'm less excited. I wish he was cheaper. The thing that you do get out of him on DFS on DraftKings specifically is it looks like Akers is going to be pretty chalk. Akers coming in at 4,700 salary and projects a couple points better than Hubbard. But just like there's input volatility on Hubbard, there's input volatility on Akers too. We just talked about how fragile his role could be with Dare Ogunbowale. So you might flip the cards over and see Akers owned, 6, 7, 10 times as much as Chuba Hubbard is. And then all of a sudden, Dare Ogunbowale is out there getting the majority of the snaps. And Chuba's out there getting 6, 7 checkdowns from Andy Dalton, just PPR scamming his way to a heck of a day. And he falls in the end zone. You're feeling really happy. So I think Chuba is on the menu. I think he's probably a pretty good leverage play. He's probably not as good like in the dog bowl where the ownership, because like the thing that's interesting about him is the ownership. Like you can get him at really depressed ownership compared to what you would see for, like Cam Akers. Like right now, it looks like Akers is projecting to be 4 times more played than Chuba Hubbard. I think you could even see that. I think it might go a little higher than that, just the way that, we've seen ownership stuff work with Sims becoming more prevalent. The really good chalk, at least based on like the projections that are being input into the Sims, kind of can get steamed up. And so it could funnel into Akers there. But, in underdog battle royales where there's a cap on ownership and it's like, okay, cool, you're playing your Chuba Hubbard, who's maybe he wasn't drafted in every draft in the dog bowl. So he's only, 3% owned instead of the 8% owned. But it's like, okay, do you really want your 3% Chuba Hubbard versus my 8% Cam Akers or my 8% Zach Charbonnet? Like that doesn't feel as exciting to me. And yes, I have drafted some Chuba in the dog bowl already. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark those teams for my accountant as some tax loss harvesting.
Yeah. I mean, no, but it's a good point. If you're, if you put a ton of ownership to Akers, which you probably gets at 4,700, then, you're getting a little bit of leverage potentially with Hubbard. And there's not like a lot of, just looking at the salaries, like there's not a ton of other cheaper guys that really jump out. So it's really a bit more about like trying to get up to some of these other mid-price guys as opposed to, but if you're doing like one of the cheaper running backs, he Yeah, he's definitely on
Chiefs,
the menu.
Chiefs aren't on this slate. That would be the other team that would have a cheap running back situation. So I don't think there is really any other option down that low. So
Yep.
Yeah, I think I backed myself into a good take with Chuba Hubbard and DFS.
What about
didn't come?
What about on the other
enough,
side? If we're getting gross, right? We've gotten real gross here. At 5,500, Zamir White is sitting there. Now, I did write up in the walkthrough that it's like one of those spots I think where like if it loser leave town matches are usually between two teams, but this is a loser leave town just for Zamir White versus the fantasy lines, because he has to do something here. Like the Panthers' run defense is really bad, They're dead last in run stop win rate. The Raiders, I think, would like to run the ball. They have they're tied with the Broncos and Bengals for the highest pass rate in the league at 71%. They've posted a 6% pass rate over expected. They're leaning into game scripts that call for passing. I think Antonio Pierce is actually pretty sharp. I like teams that I know you want to run the ball, and now you've been handed a situation where you have to pass, and then you do pass and you win the game. Yeah, hell yeah. But in the next game, what are you going to try to do against a terrible run defense? Are you going to just pass from the jump? He's not Zach Taylor, he's going to try to run the ball here, I think. So, I don't know if I'll actually do it, but if we got his gross to tout Chuba, got to bring up that Zamir White is actually in a spot where we could be like, whoa, Zamir White, ran for 80 yards, 3.9 yards per carry, but 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, the only problem I have with Zamir is on the season, again, really, really small sample size. He has 6 short down and distance snaps to 5 for Alexander Madison, so 50-50 there.
That's
he has
fair.
0 inside the 5 attempts to 1 for Madison. That's another red flag to me. So yeah, it's not as clean as Zamir has the goal line roll fully locked down. That's the problem I have with it. Otherwise, I think I'd be bought in on this take, Pat. But I'm just worried that you get it right. Zamir has a pretty big game, and Alexander Madison has 2 touchdowns. It's so yeah.
I think that's right. I don't really want to be playing, but I did want to mention this is worth a mention. The final hope for Zamir White.
Yeah, the final hope for Zamir White. This is the final hope for the show. We're going to end it here. As always, we'll be back here every Friday.
That was a Rotopat level transition right there.
Yeah, that was a stretch of a transition. I've listened to too much Good Football Show, clearly. But yeah, we'll be back next Friday. We're going to be doing the same thing every Friday. 4 games, 8 teams going through interesting situations in each game. But that will do it for us in today's show. Pat, anything you want to tell people about on Legendary Upside?
Yeah, check out legendaryupside.com for the walkthrough for Matt Irby's quick slant. We've got Sunday night football game and 2 Monday night games. He's going to be covering all of those with individual articles that'll be coming out over the next couple of days. The Sunday night one will be out Saturday morning for all of your DFS purposes. Weekly rankings are already up. We're going to be updating those today, and then again on Sunday. Rest of season rankings are up. Hope you guys checked out Stephanie Miller's waiver wire article. Always a must read. She's crushing it. So yeah, legendaryupside.com. It's only $10 a month, which is too low. I was going to raise it this offseason, and then I didn't. So get in while it's still only $10 a month. I'm going to keep it that way for the rest of the year. And yeah, walkthrough will be rolling out every season. Lots of great nuggets that we didn't have a chance to cover here. Appreciate you guys joining me for this previous show, and we'll see everybody next week.